Hello, welcome back to Diary.io. Now that we know how to connect remotely to a remote server using SSH, we need to think about how we can manage users that we create on the remote server. As systems administrators or DevOps engineers, we have to think about security all the time. Certain things like who is able to use sudo, who has administrative rights, which group is able to do what, do we want a root user to connect remotely to the server, and many other things to consider. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to either restrict or enable a user to be able to run sudo, or how to disable root access remotely completely, or just to ensure that root user doesn't connect to the remote server using a password, because if we give that kind of restriction, then the root user can only connect remotely using the SSH key pairs. Alright then, let's get started. First, let's create a user. Let's say this user is going to be a DevOps engineer who will need some level of permissions to do administrative tasks, and the user is going to be called Dami. Let's say Damilola. Oops, I need to use sudo. Okay, now we have Damilola created. Let's set password for Damilola. Okay, that's done. Now let's try to sudo su into Damilola. And what I've just done is to switch user from Dare into Damilola with sudo su, sudo switch user. If I do ID, I'm actually logged in as Damilola. Let me go into Damilola's home. Now let's assume that Damilola needs to do some administrative work and she requires to use sudo. Let's see if it's going to work. So she wants to run an ls on the root directory using sudo, asking for Damilola's password. Have a look at the error message. It says Damilola is not in the sudoers file, and then it goes further to say this incident will be reported. So even though Damilola exists on this server, she won't be able to do anything an administrator is supposed to be able to do. Now to fix this problem, Damilola has reported all these issues. So to fix this problem, what we need to do, I've just exited back into Dare, who has administrative access on this server. Now there's a file called SUDOERS file, and that's why it was reported saying Damilola does not exist in that SUDOERS file. If we do an ls on etc sudoers, sure enough, you can see that the file exists in etc. Remember, etc is for configuration, and this file is owned by root, and you can see the permissions there. It's just read only to the owner and anyone that belongs to the root group. Now this is a very sensitive file, and if you make any wrong configuration within this file, you can actually find yourself in a situation where you can't really log in, especially remotely, except you have access to the physical server. And I'll show you in a minute how to ensure that your configuration is fine before you save and exit the shell. But before that, let's go into the file and add Damilola. Now you have a couple of options. If you read this section of the file, there's a section here, and by the way, anywhere you see a hash symbol like that, it means it's just a comment, and we get into more of that when we start doing shell scripting. So this comment is telling us user privilege specification. So if we want to mention a specific user to be entered into this file, I'll press I for insert mode, and then I will type Damilola, and I can just copy all of this, paste, and save this file. To test that the configuration is good, I'll run vi sudo -c, and I need to use sudo for that. the output says etc sudoers parsed OK. If there was an error in that file, it would have told me. So we're good to go, and I can freely log out of this shell, and I'll be certain that everything is fine. Now, having said that, let's go back into Damilola and see if that configuration actually works for us. Now I'm into Damilola, and if I do sudo ls on root, put Damilola's password, and sure enough, now Damilola is able to do all of this listing. Now we know that for one single user we can make that configuration. Let's go back so I can show you quickly the other options that are there. The other option is let me remove Damilola, and if I want to do that quickly, I can just type dd. So tapping D twice on that line of the file will just remove the whole line. Now the other thing I might want to do is add Damilola to a group called admin, or add Damilola to a group called sudo. So members of the admin group may gain root privileges, and here it says allow members of the group sudo to execute any command. Or you can just create your own custom group. Let's say, for example, we call it DevOps groups, and use the same thing that they have used here, %, and just copy this depending on what you're trying to do. If you just want so if you just want users in this DevOps group to be able to gain root privileges, you can do that. So let's do that and just save this. Just clear the screen. Created the DevOps groups, and let's add Damilola to the DevOps group. Remember the command user mod -a -g and let's do ID on Damilola. As you can see, she is now part of DevOps group, and don't forget to test your sudoers file to ensure that everything is fine. Yep, everything is good. Let's go back into Damilola, sudo su. I've used my Control R there to quickly go into that, and sudo ls on root. Sudo ls on root, and now Damilola is still able to do that. Okay, let's exit that. Back to root. Now the next thing is to show you how to control the way the root user can connect remotely to a server. There's a file called etc SSHD config. Remember, we saw this file when we did a verbose on SSH in the previous video. Now we're going to go into that file. And what you're looking for is permit root login. Before I navigate to where it is in this file, let me quickly teach you a trick on how to search for string within a file using Vim. So if you type the / and just type in what you're looking for, I know what I'm looking for, and I know it's called permit. You can see it's already highlighting it for me. Permit root login. Okay, if I hit enter, it just takes me to where it is. You can see my cursor is blinking on that exact string, and if let's say there are multiple occurrences of that same string, what I can do is just hit on the letter N on my keyboard, and it will just take me to another location in the file that permit root login exists. So depending on what I'm trying to do, if that's what I want, I could just go ahead and make the edit. But this other part of the file, you can see this is just a comment showing us an explanation on how to use this. Pressing N again has taken me to where I want to go. I know this is what I want, and if I type I to go into the insert mode and remove the comment, because if the comment is there, that part of the file will not be executed. Now I want to control how the root user accesses this server, so I'll uncomment that part, and then I have two options. It's either I say no, meaning I don't want root to access this server at all. Depending on your use case, that may be what you want, but if that's not what you want to be a little bit more lenient, you can just type without password. And what that means is you cannot connect to this server except you're using your private key. So we can save this file, and just as we tested the sudoers file, we have to be able to test this file as well, just to be sure that our configuration is fine. So if we do sudo SSHD -t, it doesn't throw any errors, and that means everything is fine. If our configuration was very bad, you would have seen something like bad configuration option on the screen. Now once that is done, we need to restart the SSHD service, and we're going to go into details of what a service is and what a process is in the next couple of videos. But for now, just know that we have a tool called systemctl to manage services. So let's first check the status of our SSHD service. It's currently running, but we want it to read the latest configuration file because we've made change to the configuration file. So to do that, we can just do restart. Checking our status, the status of SSH, we can see everything is active and running again, and you can attempt to try this between your clients and remote and see what happens. Try to connect using root with a password and see what the error message is going to tell you. Well, I hope this has been very informative for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.